Welcome to Block Tornado. How are you today? And today we're going to talk a little bit about Bob Lazar again. As far as previous video goes, I talked about Bob Lazar being decoded, his story being decoded. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I got to the point where I talked about UFOs, those 9 UFOs. And as you know, it's all about 9 UFOs in the story. That's what supposedly what's valuable about this story, the 9 UFOs. And so now, as I mentioned in previous video, it's about Bob Lazar decoded. I said that they were fake. Now, it wouldn't make any sense to make any fake UFOs for the sake of fooling somebody, to make them believe that what they saw was real, to play a practical joke on them. So then brings us to another question: why would they be created? Well, basically, simply, and even Bob Lazar said that when he went by one of the hangars, the bay door were open, or one of the hangars was open, and you could see further down 9 more UFOs, supposedly different shapes, and now that does make a little bit of sense, because being different shapes, it tells us that perhaps military or whoever at S4 was creating different kind of prototypes of UFOs. And of course, you're gonna need to make a few different models to test them out to see how they work, which one works best to hover off the ground. So the aerodynamics have to be designed properly. You're gonna have to test out a few of them to see which one works better, and that sort of proves why there was 9 UFOs and different shapes. Although something else comes to my mind, that he did talk about the UFO that he was in. So, and he doesn't talk much about that there was more UFOs in the same area where he was. Which it's just a calculation issue here, because if he was in a UFO, and then he was saying that really altogether there was 9 UFOs, then the one he saw separately in a hangar somewhere, wherever that was, probably nearby, then the number of total UFOs should have been 10. If that UFO that he was going inside was separate from the other UFOs. But anyway, just something to question later on. That stick in my mind. But so now we have to wonder, why would military attempt to recreate UFO vehicles? Why in the shape of a UFO that looks like something extraterrestrial? From what we hear from stories, where did they get an idea that that whatever project they were working on, supposedly those 9 UFOs, that they have to look like something, like a UFO, shape of a UFO? How do they even know what a UFO looks like, is the question here. That's exactly what the question is. How do they know what UFO? As you're going to see in the video link below, that footage seems to be from Area 51, and it looks like a UFO. But where did they get an idea of a UFO? Was it from a comic book, or was it from something that I actually have in possession? And that's where the story of Roswell, New Mexico comes in, because as you know, something landed there and supposedly crashed, and our government sooner or later covered up with the story of being weather balloons and whatnot. But we don't know really what happened there, and we know something did happen. And so if they try to cover it up with weather balloons, if it was a cover-up, then obviously we know they did actually find something, which whatever, and in my opinion, it could have been a UFO, because as you can see, they're trying to, if my story is correct about the 9 UFOs, if those were prototypes, as you can see, they were trying to replicate such vehicles, UFO vehicles, and I think that's where they got the idea from Roswell, New Mexico crash. I'm not sure if they find something else prior to that, or where did they get an idea to try to the knowledge to actually build something, as you can see in the video below. Check it out later, you'll see. But follow me through this so we can get to the bottom of this situation here with this 9 UFOs supposedly that they have, which is so hard to believe, really. But let's just go with the flow here and see if we can dig something else out of the story. Basically, 9 UFOs, and that's what I'm thinking. That those UFOs were actually a prototype of some sort that military was working on, and that is consistent. It does make some logic to it. If Bob Lazar is saying they were different shapes, so now you can understand that why they are different shapes. If anybody would make them different shapes, is basically to see which one flies best, which one performs best. Because shapes are basically because of aerodynamics. And that explains why there were different shapes. So, and again, like I said, I think Bob Lazar did see what he see, the body language and all that, yada yada, is all, he's flawless in his stories. You have to understand, and anybody that can lie so long on Joe Rogan's show for like 2 hours long, they had to break a sweat at some point, or make some kind of mistake in their story, or they will show some kind of the pressure is just the pressure alone, it will break them, the story in half, because you can't lie in front of the whole world, like that. So I don't really think that the story is fake, but like I said, the UFOs could be fake. They could have been prototypes. And like I said, if they were fake, why would the military go through all this just to fool somebody? So that doesn't make sense. But like I mentioned before, this whole story has a flaw. In Bob Lazar Decoded, I mentioned that was the key question in that video. And the question is basically, why did military let this whole story out into the wild? Didn't they know what's going to happen? If you're gonna start a spark in a forest, I'm sure you're gonna burn the whole forest down eventually, and that's what really happened. The whole world is now in big question of this UFOs, and that could mean many things for humanity. It can mean many, it can answer all kinds of questions as far as those 9 UFOs, if they were true. And that's why this story is so interesting, particularly to me, and I'm sure it's also interesting to you, most likely because you wonder, where are those 9 UFOs, right? We all want to know if they're real. And you understand, it doesn't take a genius to realize that what this technology can mean for us. If we ever wanted to see other habitable planets like Pandora and so forth, as you've seen in Avatar, like exotic planets like that, or whatever they might look like, we can finally see them with this type of technology. That's what I think, and it's a reality. It's a shortcut for humanity that to be able to go to other planets and not just talk about it in our lifetime. If of course, the rest of us will never get the hands on that technology, obviously, but who knows if they implement that technology into mainstream transportation, who knows, then maybe we would be able to see universe and to see what's out there. If actually that's even a good idea, I don't know, maybe God made us to be where we are on purpose. We're hidden from the rest of the universe. You have to imagine how small really we are in this infinity, and it's just growing more and more, faster than the speed of light, supposedly. And it's basically, what's even the point to be going into space, into infinity, when it never ends? That's something that comes up a lot in my mind. And why, which I need to cut into the story now. I wanted to mention something about Voynich, I believe that's how pronounced, Voynich Manuscript. And as you know, this whole Voynich Manuscript story really nobody was able to decode it. Nobody knows what it means, what the letters mean inside, what's the writing, what's the text. It doesn't, it's all some alien kind of language. I'm not saying it's alien language, but nobody can decode it. However, this particular channel is about, trying to figure out the truth, and I love hunting for the truth. Otherwise, what would be the point? Because, as you know, personally, I've seen, I don't know if you know, but if you go to blogtornado.com, I wrote an article about, in the UFO section, about orbs and UFO and orbs phenomena was the title, and I explain about orbs that I've seen, which are some kind of alien entities in some kind of lights in the sky that are very common these days, actually, around the world. And but when you have that kind of experience, when you actually see it with your own eyes, it's a totally different perspective that you get on if aliens exist. It makes you think twice about particularly the videos that you see on YouTube that are, they have something to do with aliens. However, I do talk about this in some other video you might want to check. It's about fake YouTube videos, fake UFO videos on YouTube, and how to distinguish some of those videos. So if you're interested in watching that, I will leave the notification here on top. But yeah, it's interesting to tie a little bit the story of Voynich Manuscript, and I said a lot of people cannot decode that, but let me tell you, everything is possible, and I do have some ideas that could tie in to another story from the past, another philosophy, or whatever you might call it. But it's a story, and that everybody's familiar with. I just don't want to let it out right now. When I get some more subscribers, then I will. But it's just something that does kind of make sense as far as this book goes, and I'm 100% somewhat sure that that book belongs to that story. However, I will let some of the story out, and I will tell you if it's true, if my calculations are correct, then I would say that particular story, it's something, quite honestly, that book shouldn't be messed with, and it says in the story not to mess with the book, and that's why the book is not to be decoded, because probably the information that it possesses, it could probably, supposedly, it could unleash evil into this world if it's decoded, and that's why it's in such language that is so difficult to decode, which perhaps it was meant to be, and yet the book says the story says don't go any further, stay away, and keep it that way. And I'm not going to go into details. Like I said, I don't want to let the whole story out, but once you know what I'm talking about, you understand what story goes with this book. And so we shouldn't tamper with the book. It should stay the way it is, and it's for the best. So I can understand, because the signature of this book, the style of this book, all ties into the story. So like I said, if I get more subscribers later on, we're gonna go after Voynich Manuscript. It's not about particularly what the text says. Like I said, it's something not to be decoded. So I'm not gonna be getting into what the text is all about. So now you know that I'm just trying to relate the story to another story that has similarities and actually falls in perfectly. It aligns properly in a way that even if it was not the right story, it somehow aligns perfectly with this story that I might tell you down the road. And for that reason, I have an escape there, because if it lines up properly, then who knows? Maybe it is part of that story that I'm talking about, this Voynich Manuscript. So that's as far as Voynich Manuscript goes, and let's leave that for now, and something will definitely I want to bring up later on. But you know, I do want to talk a little bit about alien abduction, and I will make a video about alien abduction alone, just for sake of the alien abductions and alien language, what extraterrestrial are trying to the way they communicate with us. As you know, they're very intelligent beings. If 9 UFOs that Bob Lazar is talking about, you must understand that technology that comes from wherever it comes from, it's not a toy. So much so that technology that we have, now that's a toy comparing to technology they have. It's light years ahead. Like I mentioned, like Bob Lazar was saying, it can bend gravity, it can bend time, it can bend light. To do that kind of things, to bend time and the space itself, I mean, you must have, because he explains how the UFOs actually fly. He mentioned that it bends the gravity in front of the actual UFO, the actual gravity, I mean the actual space and time in front of the UFO is actually bent. So basically the UFO is falling forward when the time bends, when the time goes on a slope, and therefore UFO is falling forward, and that's how supposedly it moves. Something like that along those lines. I mean, that just shows that Bob Lazar has some scientific skills, that he was a scientist. If anything, I do have some video to prove it about his Corvette that he made that runs on hydrogen and so forth, and you can see that he has interest in science. And anyways, the language of aliens, it was shocking to me, because I watched one of the abduction stories, and I'm listening to this lady how she saw 2 orbs that landed, that came very close to this particular place. I just don't want to say what it is yet, because anyways, she talks about it. The aliens come into her room and so forth and so forth. Then suddenly they show the CN Tower here in Toronto, and I'm like, holy. But what happened? So of course I listened to the whole story, and what happened is that they come into her room, and they actually leave the marks on her below the navel, 3 marks and so forth. But what was really interesting from my analysis, and I do like to observe, and I notice even if temperature drops 1 degree, I can tell. And in this particular, what I noticed, there's a pattern with a lot of alien abduction stories. And what is this pattern? Well, almost in every story, and even what happened to me is, when I witnessed the orbs, it happened to me when I was a kid. And many of those stories that happen, abduction stories that happen to other people, are supposedly happen to them when they're kids. A lot of kids see those UFOs. Maybe they don't want to show themselves like to adults, and as you see how they do that, because you know that you're going to run away, and they know probably from experience, you see, that a person, if they're fully conscious, if the person is fully conscious, aware of the surroundings at that time, I'm sure they're going to freak out, right? They're just going to go crazy. And when they put them under hypnosis, and whoever is trying to hypnotize them to get some truth out of them, and they all start to cry, and also they're afraid, they start to scream and so forth. But when they're telling the story in real time, when they're fully awake, they seem to be quite calm about it, you see. But maybe that's not what really happened subconsciously. You see, when they're subconscious, they're more aware of what happened, and in their subconscious mind, they were completely freaked out. And that's why, like, whatever it is in general, you don't want to freak out people, and I can imagine that would happen to anybody. That's why they kind of sedate you with whatever they use to make you. Because many times whoever's telling the story about abduction, they always say they can't remember, or their relatives or whoever's with them, they always kind of feel sleepy, or they weren't awake at all. And that's the thing that always happens with alien abductions. It's very common that you will be in half awake, half half asleep, and that's just what I want to say simply is basically that what they're doing is they're realizing the fact that we are going to freak out, and that's the reason why they always come in a way that it's like you're not 100% sure of what happened, but it happened, but you're just not 100% sure. Okay, just like if you had a lucid dream, like for some reason that you were there, but you also understand it was a dream at the same time, but it's like you're in a halfway of truth, halfway of imagination state. And that's the thing about aliens. They know how to approach us. That's all I'm saying. They know from experience that we're gonna freak out, and that's why they do what they do to us, so we don't freak out. And many times when those abduction stories happened, they will tell you those people don't freak out. They go with the story because they probably did something to them and they couldn't move, or most of the time they say they couldn't move or whatever, because they were sedated with something, and they were pretty much in a state where calm, relaxing state. And that's what UFOs, I think, aliens do to people again. So you can see they know how to handle us. Okay, so that's something we have to be aware of, that they're just not some mindless human beings, mindless aliens, but as that they're more advanced, and therefore they know what how to understand the psychological impact it might have on us, what kind of reaction we'll have towards that. So they understand all that, and that's what I'm saying. However, I do want to talk about another subject that it just came to my mind that I was thinking about before. The subject of this whole situation of our existence, our existence on planet, and it seems to me more and more that this whole alien scenario is sort of like based around some kind of like an experiment, because I just happened to see a lot of Illuminati symbols, the all-seeing eye. And if you haven't heard my story about my Illuminati Decoded, I'll explain to you what the all-seeing eye means. And as I told you before, I have an experience of such, and that explains to you what that means, what the all-seeing eye on a $1 American bill means, and what it is. And I've just happened to see it all around the world, basically. That's Illuminati symbol. So it's not just in States, and also in Europe and whatnot. And of course, I know the story about Bavarian Illuminati and so forth. So that's obviously Europe. But I mean, I think it's spread across the world. And the thing is, something tells me more and more that this whole existence on this planet, on Earth, is something ties in with an experiment. And that's why this all-seeing eye in the sky that's always watching us all the time, that, and supposedly that says on an American bill, but really, to me, like I explained that story, it was about something else. Check it out. I don't want to just give it out, so at least I make you watch that video a little bit so you understand what's going on. There's a little bit of animation in it. So, however, it's not a straight talk, it's edited. So yeah, that's something to talk about. Certainly I want to talk about that, because it seems more and more and more that perhaps our existence here on Earth is more something to do with a project, like a experiment. And I can connect the dots, and if the dots connect, then it's definitely worth talking about it. I mean, you always have to back yourself up, of course, if you're going to talk about something like that. So that's why when I mentioned about the Voynich Manuscript, I mean, I have to have something to back it up. I mean, it's not just to make a story, right? So that's the main purpose of this whole idea about as far as Voynich Manuscript goes. Either way, pretty much that's what I want to talk about. Like I said, Bob Lazar's story again is basically, all about the 9 UFOs and what that can do for our humanity as a whole, if they were really real. And I did mention in other videos that, this is 30 years ago. You have to understand, it's a long time this happened, and what this could mean for the actual advancement in technology for US, especially then it was 30 years ago. If you have something like that to study, and that's a big privilege for US. So that's why this story is more important than many UFO stories out there. That's the only reason why. Because supposedly the possession of those UFOs are in military hands. But like I said, I will personally never understand the management behind the S4, and why would anybody leave those UFOs to someone in someone's hands and then let them go. That to me doesn't make any sense. They would either try to cover up that story somehow, that Bob Lazar will just not, will never talk about it, either with money or whatever they might, to compensate to just to cover up the story. But I don't know why would he be special person to let go out of this project with such information, when that other scientists before him, nobody came forward. So what the hell? What's going on here? Why was he let go? What? Because of his image? Because he was cute or something? Like, I don't get it. That doesn't make any sense to me. Nobody would make such managerial decision, such military decision in a military controlled place such as S4. So that does not pass by me at all. So I think that's why I think Bob Lazar's story has been decoded, because there is no logical explanation for this. So I think that there is no. That just basically says that there was no 9 UFOs. It was actually some kind of prototypes that US was working on, and that's why I explained to you why and so forth. And as you know, those UFOs are in basically, like I said, just prototypes that they were working on, some kind of, but the question is, where did they get an idea to make something like a UFO in the shape of a UFO? Again, it could tie in with Roswell, New Mexico, and that's where probably the UFO that crashed wasn't working because it crashed, or they might wanted to duplicate it technology somehow, and so they can replicate more UFOs, more technology like that, more vehicles like that, for whatever military reasons. And that's why we see those prototypes. And as you know, because he said there was 9, right? And as you know, in the video, I will leave the link. Check the link below and see that UFO. Where is it from? Because to me, it looks like it's a functional UFO somewhat, but I think it's from a prototype that they were working on at Area 51, and had nothing to do with being a real UFO, the one that we really want to know about. So yeah, that's pretty much all that I want to talk about in this particular video. And don't forget about Voynich Manuscript that we might go over eventually. And yeah, just keep up with me. I try to release video every 2-3 days, and here on Block Tornado on YouTube. There's 2 channels of Block Tornado. However, one of them is dedicated to these videos. Another one is just a little bit about technology and Bitcoin. It's a different. I might take that actually down and change the name for that so that people don't get confused. But yeah, just stick around, and I would really appreciate. I am appreciating this, that you're staying with me all the way up until this point, and the video is just so long. I will edit some things out, but it's been a while. So if you stayed all the way here, all I have to say to you, thank you very much. Okay, thanks for watching, and hopefully I find something entertaining here, which is really not the purpose of this channel. It's not the entertainment, but it's to get to the truth of mysteries around this world. So yeah, that's about it. Again, if you're interested, I can notify you. However, all you have to do is subscribe here down below at the bottom right corner and give it a thumbs up. That would be great. And what happens as soon as I release a video, press that button, or you can put the bell notification. As soon as it comes out, boom, you're gonna be notified about it, and we can hear more about interesting things. All right, thank you very much, and that's pretty much all. Peace. Cheers. Thank you for watching.